This is your pal EMDSD14R, and this is helpful tips on kit bashing. Before I actually begin this video is not to tell anyone or basically say that your way of kit bashing is wrong. This is a video basically to give you a general idea of what kit bashing is, how many different ways it can be done, but however you do your kit bashing that's unique to you will make your model something cool and something enjoyable for what you want and for what other people enjoy to see. So I'm not basically making this video saying, hey, your way of kit bashing is wrong. I'm just making a video to show you what ideas you can come up with to make different locomotives, and what techniques that I use to make my models, just to give you a general idea of what kit bashing is, but not to tell anyone that your way of doing it is wrong. Just wanted to clarify that, okay? So as a lot of you guys know, I'm a huge kit basher, and my specialty is basically customizing locomotives or building locomotives that don't exist. And I've become pretty famous on YouTube for a lot of the one-off locomotives that I've designed and built. And a lot of you have, followed my channel over the years asking about the progress of some of them. So I have a couple of these models out here, and I wanted to show you different aspects of what kit bashing entitles. Some of you may think that a complete rebuild of a locomotive is what kit bashing is all about, which technically that's true, but it can be something as simple as just changing a bell, adding Mars lights, changing a horn, to match a particular prototype. Even redecaling a locomotive to match a prototype is a form of kit bashing. It's not really, you don't have to cut anything apart, but if you wanted to do like a patch job or something, that is a form of kit bashing. But anyway, I'm going to show you some models that I've done. There are a couple here that I actually haven't done, but I'm going to use them as references as to how other people do kit bashes. But most of the ones up here are the ones that I have created. So you guys know my YouTube channel name is EMDSD14R. Some of you that are more like that recently just came to my channel probably don't know where that name came from. Well, this is the locomotive that I named my channel. Well, I named my channel after this locomotive, and this is the SD14R. It's basically an in-step between model between the SD10 and the SD18 models. This was actually the first chop nose unit that I actually did. I did this when I was still in high school. I think I was, what, 15 or 16 when I made this engine. So it's an Athearn Blue Box SD9 that I chopped the nose on. The number boards come from a Mantua Jeep 20 shell, and then I did the one-piece windshield here. It's got a 5-chine horn, and then what makes the SD14s unique is that they have cylindrical exhaust stacks. Now, if you saw my more recent SD14R, the Santa Fe unit, that's a later variation of the SD14. Early first generation SD14s and 14Rs started out as SD7s and SD9s. The later units were rebuilt from the cores of SD24 units. So those are later models, but the very first ones, the older ones, are from SD7s and SD9s, and these could have been from a number of railroads: Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, Milwaukee Road, Nickel Plate, Pennsylvania Railroad, just to name a few. So yeah, that's the original SD14R. Still has the blue box drive. Still is not finished, obviously. I just haven't gotten around to doing it, but it will be finished eventually, hopefully soon. Just don't have a date as to when. And then we're moving down the line here. I'll get back to the second row. This is the Jeep 38-2W. So it's a Jeep 38-2, but it has the cab of a Jeep 60M, and it's also HEP equipped. This is a one-off model that I did for my ER&W Railroad. She's mostly finished. I just got to put the railings on her, get decals for her. I might end up repainting her again. She's got Southern Pacific style plows on the front and the rear. It's a great runner. Yeah, it still has the blue box drive and everything. Yeah, great runner, great locomotive. And I always like the oddball engines with HEP power, like engines that normally don't have HEP. I make them have HEP because that's just how I am. Moving on, I'm trying to do this in chronological order, by the way. We have the F24C and the F24CB. Now, if you guys are familiar with Australian F units, they basically have the Class A, the Class B, the CFL class, the S class. These are basically 6-axle versions of the American F units. And I liked them so much, and I still do, that I decided to make an Americanized version. So let's just say, for all intents and purposes, the railroads wanted a 6-axle F unit. What would it look like? Well, my version would use an SD24 or even an SD9 frame. You would basically just stretch the F7 body to accommodate that frame. My version actually has HEP, so yeah, this is made for my railroad. It has the roof-mounted air tanks. The front portholes are plated over. I did that on both sides of the unit. It also has I believe this is a Western Pacific style plow, and these holes will be eventually for ditch lights, and it also has Mars lights. But I made this engine, years ago, like just before I got into college. I made this engine. Oh, another cool thing about my HEP exhaust stacks is they actually have holes in them. So let me see if I can clear that up. There's actually holes there, so I use copper tubing for that. That's one of the features that I use for that. And then this is the B unit. Not many people know that there is a B unit, but I did make a B unit. This was like maybe 3 or 4 years after that. It's still not finished. I got to do some tweaking with it. I definitely need a chassis, preferably an Atlas SD24, SD26 chassis, because this one has an SD24 chassis. Not the Atlas, not the older Atlas ones. I'm talking about like the later ones from China. That's the chassis that this one uses. But yeah, I actually have drawings of these units on my computer. Originally, I was going to make 4 of these engines, and I still might, but the next 2 units might be based off of some Australian locomotives that I plan on purchasing. I might convert one of those Australian engines into a B unit so I can make another one of these, and then the other A unit. The other engines will be based off of Australian locomotives, preferably the S-Class, because the S-Class, even though they have double cabs at each end, the rear cab actually looks just like an American F unit rear, except there's windows cut out for the engineer to see. But those are easy to plate over, and that's why I was going to choose that class for that modification. But we'll get into that down the road. As my kit bashing skills progressed, my ideas for custom locomotives also, started to go higher, and I said, well, let's make a couple freelance B units. So this is an SD60B. It started out as a rail power product shell, and then I customized it. So the rear section here, or the front section I should say, comes from a Proto 2000 SD50 shell. These 2 fans are from the Proto Power West kit. This is a Details Associates SD60 exhaust stack. The center section here is cut out of the SD50 shell. These fans are some extra fans I had lying around, and the chassis is a Proto SD60 chassis. This engine is actually extremely heavy. It's a great puller. I'm probably going to change the chassis around because the side frames are really loose on it, and you know, I need that to be changed. But that's somewhere down the road. Still got to figure out what class that's going to be in. Not sure exactly where that's going to be. And then shortly after I made this engine, I had a phase where I just wanted to do a Draper taper engine because at the time, the only Draper tapers you could get were, or the cal, well, more or less the cal units you could get, I should say cal units, were the Athearn Genesis F45s, FP45s. You could find them in blue boxes and so forth. And I think around the time I made this one, Bowser had just brought out the SD40-2F Red Barns. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make my own. So I basically took a Athearn Blue Box -9 and I made it into a -9 Draper taper. I think it's called a C44-9 CW. This is basically the American version of the -840CM. As you guys can see, this was not easy to do. The hardest part, I would have to say, was getting this all to be straight. Here, this was the hard part, and then getting everything on the roof line to line up as well. I still had to get the roof lines correct to like the angle of the roof lines to match the cab here. That's still something I have to do. It's mostly finished. I mean, it's a cal unit, so there's really not much I can do to add details on here unless I carve them out and stuff like that. I do need to fix this door here. It does have steps here that are connected to the truck, so when the truck swivel, the steps swivel, but I might actually change that feature. But we'll see what happens with that. But that's a project. That is supposed to be an ER&W engine. Probably will keep it in this series. Not really sure just yet. But yeah, this is how my kit bashing evolved with the different ideas that I've had. Enough with the fantasy engines for now. Let's go on to something that's a little bit more prototypical. So this is a IHC NJT E9A. Proto Power West made a kit that's for IHC E units. They're very, very hard to get. I found one on eBay a couple years ago, or many years ago, and I decided to make a fantasy variant of the NJT E units. Of course, NJT didn't have an E unit in this number, which is perfect because I can keep it the same road number. Some ideas from some rebuilt E and F units, preferably the ones on the Burlington Northern that were used for commuter service on Metra, and some Chicago Northwestern F units that were rebuilt, along with the NJT F units. I took some ideas from their HEP setups, and I went with the NJT ones, which I thought they were really cool. It's got a 5-chime horn. It's got the different plow up front. I like these Western Pacific or Southern Pacific style plows on E and F units. I just think they look super, super cool. The unit is mostly done. I do need to get it repainted and redecaled, but it's mostly done. I just got to get some other details added onto it. That project will be eventually finished in the near future. But yeah, I do have one NJT E unit, and it's a fantasy one. Some of the more advanced kit bashes that I showed, but let me show you something that's very, very simple. So simple that pretty much any beginner can technically do it. So this is my ER30C. It's basically the ER&W version of the SF30C. When Santa Fe rebuilt their U30Cs and U33Cs, they actually added a bulge just in this area here. Mine is a little bit different. I actually took Details Associates angled air filter boxes for like a Jeep 38-2. I cut them down and I actually sanded off some of the door details and I added them to this unit here. I will be doing some other details on this that will actually make it more distinctive, but that's just a simple modification that pretty much anyone. Every time I make a clip, my phone overheats and shuts off. I don't know why. It's not hot. It shouldn't be doing that. But anyway, getting back to this, this is a kit bash that anyone pretty much can do. It's very simple. The parts are inexpensive. Locomotive's probably like 70 or 80 bucks depending on where you get it from. But yeah, the parts are pretty well, like not that expensive. Moving on to one of my more advanced kit bashing projects. You guys know what this is. This is the Bombardier jet train. This is where my kit bashing skills have progressed up until now. Most advanced kit bashing projects I have done thus far. The longest time to take getting done as far as details and concern. A lot of the details, the exhaust duct, other details were actually hand shaped by me and cut. Some details were reused, like these electrical boxes here were cut down and reused and repositioned on here. I basically followed roof shot pictures of the real Bombardier jet train. Following the roof shot details of the real Bombardier jet train, I was able to come up with a very close representation of all the ductwork, vents, and other details to get it as close as possible. I still need to add the horns to it, and then pretty much that's it, and it'll be ready to get painted. Another thing about kit bashing is, I don't know if I mentioned this previously, but it's not just regulated to the external aspects of locomotives. Kit bashing can also relate to internal upgrades. So for example, if you are repowering your Athearn Blue Box Jeep 38-2 with a Athearn Genesis motor, that technically is a form of kit bashing in my opinion because you're upgrading the drive system. That's a simple way, but then there are more complex ways. So I'm going to show you these two locomotives here. This one I didn't kit bash. That was actually built by, I believe his name was Eric Miller, and he did an entire page or forum, several pages on Diesel Detailer's website about the Jeep 28M and how he came up with this one for his Fantasy Western Railroad. That was actually the first custom kit bash locomotive that's like that I won on eBay. Originally when he made it, he put a Kato drive in it, but then when I got it, it was a dummy, and then I actually rebuilt the drive. Started life as a Proto 2000 Jeep 18, and he added the Cannon Company cab and Cannon Company details along with Details Associates parts to make it into this engine. Here's your standard Proto Jeep 18 with the chopped nose and the regular cab, but I'm going to be showing you the differences between the two drives here. Kato trucks and the Athearn Genesis motor with custom modified drive shafts, and then this one still has the regular Proto drive, so I'm going to show that to you right now. So there's your standard Proto drive, Athearn Genesis drive. So Nicholas Smith Trains actually did the drive shafts from the motor to here. I basically handled this part here to get the Kato trucks to work. But it actually runs great. It's a great running locomotive, and the Genesis drive works perfectly, and it's DCC ready. See the difference between the two. So kit bashing is not just, you know, the external aspects of a locomotive. It's also internal as well. By the way, the Kato Jeep 7 and Jeep 9 trucks are compatible with the Proto 2000 Athearn Ready to Roll and Athearn Blue Box chassis, just so that you guys know. A lot of people use Kato trucks with Genesis motors on older Athearn Blue Boxes. So Athearn Blue Box trucks are swappable to the Proto 2000 Jeeps because they use the same bolsters. I'm going to persevere with this video, guys. It may have a lot of short clips because my phone keeps overheating, but I'm going to make this video. So perseverance is key. Bashing is not just for external aspects of locomotives. It can also be internal aspects as well. However you decide to do it, whatever techniques or tricks that you know that work for you, go right ahead and use them. But if what I've explained to you helps you out a little bit, That's great too. One thing I must say is never limit yourself in your thinking. Always experiment and create and make it your own. Be creative and think outside the box, and that's what I've done here. So I hope this gives some insights into my kit bashing skills. I will have more coming up soon. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask, all right? All right, guys. Take care.